House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 7 is called The Red Sowing, which refers to Rhaenyra on Dragonstone trying to get the dragon seeds onto the back of the riderless dragons. I guess the red might also refer to the dragon on her sigil, the Targaryen red dragon on the black background, and I guess it also refers to the chaos that goes into getting this achieved. Dragons and riders are where we open the episode. Rhaenyra on Syrax has located Adam of Hull, the new rider of Seasmoke. Adam and Rhaenyra talk on the beach. Who is he? Rhaenyra wants to know. What does he want? As the bastard child of Corlys Velaryon, Adam knows enough about the Game of Thrones that it's time to bend the knee, and that's what he does. I love how during the conversation between the humans, we also see the dragons greeting each other vocally. While we know that the creatures bond with their riders, I think it's an open question about their relationships with each other, as presumably they find themselves on the different sides of their riders' arguments on a relatively regular basis. How much is a disagreement between two riders going to impact the relationship between dragons? If the show continues at the glacial pace it's going, I don't think we're going to see much exploration of this question. Rhaenyra asks Adam to bring Seasmoke to Dragonstone, if he can. At Dragonstone, the Black Council are being exactly how you expect them to be. Corlys guesses who the dragon rider is. Bartimos Seltagard seems to have resorted to drink, following his humiliation in the last episode. He's also noticeably more annoyed and unstable, but with the change in strategy from human armies to dragon riders, the Black Council looks less relevant than before, if just as unproductive. Once she's back, Rhaenyra wants to talk to Mysaria. She's got new hope, she says, for new dragon riders. Rhaenyra's still holding on to the fantasy she can find these dragon riders through the aristocracy. Mysaria disabuses her of that notion. There are bastards under the sheets and in the wood piles, she says, which Mysaria knows from her time living and building up a spy network in King's Landing. Rhaenyra's biased towards the aristocracy, partly because she's a member of it, but also partly because of her three brown-haired children that she continues to insist are all the children of her marriage to Laenor Velaryon. Mysaria is direct enough to point out that her brothers, Alicent's children, want to destroy her, and raising an army of bastards might be the easiest way to stop that. I guess in some way this feels like some poetic justice for Rhaenyra. The only practical strategy that looks like winning her war is to embrace the large number of Targaryen offspring born on the wrong side of the sheets, which she still can't admit to herself that she has contributed to. Rhaenyra's eldest son Jace knows who his real father is, and knows the potential implications of bringing all these dragon seeds and giving some of them dragons. Despite Rhaenyra's obvious distaste for the Targaryen bastards, it's Jace who goes verbally further, describing them as mongrels. When he brings this up to his mother, she shoots him down. Think what's at stake, she says. Jace knows exactly what is at stake. Jace owning a dragon gives him some legitimacy, going a decent way to overcoming his physical resemblance to House Strong instead of his nominal father. Once Rhaenyra is dead, a real possibility, considering the malicious nature of the war so far, Jace will just be one of many Targaryens who have a dragon. People may be more willing to push the narrative that Jace is illegitimate once Rhaenyra is out of the picture. Rhaenyra really has no answer for this. I mislike all of this, she says. As much as the Greens are pretty much all awful people, the show has taken time to explore their characters much more fully than Rhaenyra. The Dragon Seeds plot offers an opportunity to bring Rhaenyra to account for the instability that she's brought to Westeros due to the parentage of her three apparently Velaryon children. But the character and the show handwaves and dismisses these ideas through Rhaenyra's own mouth. It's a real shame that the show writers seem so biased towards her and so disinterested in deepening her character. It makes the character much less sympathetic. I'll come back to the red sowing itself later on in the episode, but first let's have a look at the Greens. Let's get Alicent out of the way. She's moping, she's irrelevant, she says nothing is clean in the Red Keep. She's very much of the opinion that none of that whatsoever is her fault. No way, not at all. She decides to take a journey to the King's Wood with just one member of the King's Guard. She has more than one scene in this episode, but none of them are relevant or useful to the plot, so I'm not going to talk about them further. In the training yard of the Red Keep, the regent Aemond is sending at least one, maybe two, of his big brother's lickspittles off to the wall, following their failure to follow orders during the riot. Jasper Wild and Larys Strong are watching. They know that the Dragon Seasmoke has a rider. Wild wants Larys's advice about what to do next. Should he tell Aemond? Larys doesn't believe it's true, or at least tells Wild that he doesn't believe it. It's difficult to tell, as the actor who plays Larys is really good at keeping his cards close to his chest, and it feels like Larys Strong is suddenly becoming the main character in the Green faction, or at least he's the character who's driving the plot, because after the scene with Jasper where they talk about basically how are they going to manipulate Aemond, we see Larys doing the same to Aegon II. Aegon is beginning his rehabilitation, as much as it is, walking around the bedroom with the help of the Grand Maester. Larys admonishes the Maester for helping Aegon do this, but we find out later that the Grand Maester was doing it on Larys's instructions. So basically, Aegon is seen as a target for Larys's manipulation. They put Aegon back in bed. The Grand Maester says he must rest, but Larys says he must work harder. So this scene honestly feels a little bit confused. The Grand Maester wants Aegon to rest, but makes him walk around. Larys tells the Grand Maester to put him in bed, but then tells him he must work harder. Is this an attempt to confuse Aegon, or is it just poor writing? They at least establish that Aegon is under threat, principally from his younger brother. Down in the city itself, we see Myssaria's agents recruiting the dragonseeds. Down in Ulf's bar, again, not Ulf's bar, but the bar where we find Ulf, he's drinking, because that's pretty much what he does. He doesn't want to go to Dragonstone and has to be pushed and shamed into it. I can't be sure it's all true, he says. You're all spark and no tinder, says another patron in the bar, which is a great summation of Ulf's character. On the other hand, Hugh the Hammer is enthusiastic about going. Whereas Ulf uses his Targaryen background to get free food and drinks, Hugh feels a genuine sense of grievance over the treatment of his mother and himself. Purely just circumstance that gives him a lower status in life compared to his cousins Viserys and Daemon. His ongoing poverty and drive to get out of this motivates him to ignore his wife and go to Dragonstone anyway. Let's go through the rest of the Blacks. Over on Driftmark, we get another couple of scenes between Alan and Corlys. Now that Rhaenys is out of the picture, Corlys looks like he's trying to build bridges with Alan a bit more. He gives Alan the task of going to King's Landing and supervising the collection of the dragon seeds and transporting them to Dragonstone. Even though they're at war, it seems like there's pretty much free travel between the two enemy capitals. 1 or 2 episodes ago, we saw Corlys offer his granddaughter the Driftmark throne, and she rejected it on the basis of being a Targaryen, of being fire and blood. In contrast, Alan describes himself as being of salt and sea. It looks like we're very much moving towards Alan being legitimised and made Corlys's heir. Hopefully we can get there soon. The somewhat frustrating storyline in the Vale continues as Rhaenyra and her prince and dragons leave for Essos. As the group departs, Rhaenyra runs away, presumably going to find a dragon, and no one seems to notice her going. Like Alicent, this character feels shoehorned into the show at this point, which is bizarre when there's an entire character from Fire and Blood that Rhaenyra seems to be replacing. And at Harrenhal, the action is shifting more from the spiritual to the temporal. Young Oscar Tully, now the Lord of Riverrun as his grandfather is dead, arrives with the Riverlords and expertly manipulates Daemon, demonstrating both why the Tullys are lords of the Riverland and why Daemon isn't suitable to be king. Basically, Daemon gets his Riverland army offered to him on a plate, but he has to appease the Riverlords by executing William Blackwood. It's an excellent scene, perfectly illustrating the strengths of Daemon and where Daemon is lacking. To emphasise the point, we next get a scene Daemon walking through Harrenhal and meeting Viserys. It's Viserys towards the end of his life, ravaged by the illness that killed him. Daemon's big brother takes off his crown. "Do you still want it?" he asks. It crushes whoever wears it. We saw it crush Viserys in Season 1. Daemon's humiliation in the Godswood is just a small taste of what Viserys was put through when he was selected to be king. So while in the last episode, recapitulating the heir for a day speech was not the best, This is a great excuse to bring back Paddy Considine and cap off Daemon's internal journey, and that brings us to the Red Sowing itself. Down in the caverns underneath Dragonstone, the silver-haired dragon seeds are gathered and waiting for Rhaenyra. When she arrives, she's approached by the dragon keepers, who aren't happy about what she plans. Dragons, they say, are not playthings in the game of men. They are the last magic of old Valyria in this sad world. Rhaenyra's counter-argument is that the gods sent them here, and the dragon keepers say no, she organised them coming here. This is interesting, as it seems the dragon keepers aren't loyal to the Targaryens necessarily. They're loyal to the idea of what the dragons are. In the last couple of episodes, we've had both Jace and the dragon keepers call out Rhaenyra's hypocrisy. The accusations just seem to bounce off. After giving the dragon seeds a bit of a speech, Rhaenyra calls Vermithor using some Valyrian speech, poem, song type thing, like she did with Sea Smoke, like Daemon did in season 1. There's a moment where Vermithor and Rhaenyra lock eyes in this kind of unspoken agreement. What that agreement is seems to be that Vermithor will take a rider, but he'll also get quite a bit of lunch. It's telling that once Rhaenyra has called the dragon, herself and her closest advisors retreat to a safe distance as fast as politeness allows. Most of the dragon seeds, well, they end up like Steffon Darklyn. Hugh the Hammer probably takes the most dangerous and the most successful approach, staring down Vermithor until the dragon stops his rampage. Ulf, on the other hand, just gets lucky, running away until he finds himself getting some nose bumps from Silverwing, like Sunfire gave Aegon just before Rook's Rest. I think my favourite part of the scene was probably the sound design for Vermithor, like this huge bubbling car engine that just doesn't seem to stop. Rhaenyra puts the dragon seeds to work straight away. At a meeting of the Green Council, we discover there's a dragon flying over King's Landing. In response, Aemond leaves the council and gets on the back of Vhagar. We find out it's Ulf, flying over the city on Silverwing. I think the best description I've seen is it's basically like a homeless man driving a supercar. Ulf is baiting Aemond and leads him back to Dragonstone, or at least most of the way to Dragonstone. Aemond pursues him, but turns back before getting there, realizing that it's probably a trap. And we get this money shot, Rhaenyra and a couple of other dragons and dragon riders waiting for Aemond to come. So that's House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 7. The Harrenhal visions are hopefully over, and we can move that plot line on with more conventional means. The Greens basically seem to all hate each other, and the Blacks have been forced into some compromises that a lot of them don't really like. One more episode to go, and there's a lot to resolve here.